Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local.
Okay, welcome back to episode 40, special Google Business Profile GBP edition of the Near Memo. And Mike and David are here with me as always.
It's going to take a while to get used to that, I have to say. But I'm sure some enterprising domainer has already bought up all those domains. So
we are talking
businessprofile.org,
GBP optimization and all that stuff.
Yeah. We are talking exclusively about Google Business Profile, which was the rebranding from Google My Business, which was the rebranding from Plus Pages, Local Business Center, and so on. We'll talk about all of that today. Mike has, well, I don't know if we're going to talk about this week. Mike has made some very interesting messaging discoveries within the dashboard itself, but maybe you'll save that for the blog post, Mike, right?
All right. So the question for me about the rebranding is whether it's more than it seems or less than it seems. Google is positioning it strictly as a rebranding. And, you know, obviously I take a very long historical view of this. David and I have been at this. What are we on? 14 years, David?
15 years,
yeah, Greg's probably longer than that. Yeah. So to me, it's part of this arc of this rebranding where it started as a business tool, local business center, and then it became a consumer and business tool with Places and had a forward-facing brand. And they even went so far as to put Places search, I don't know if you remember, in 2011 under Mayor, they put Places search as a drop-down menu in Google search. So there was a forward-facing brand to it, which started to dissipate once Mayor went away and Google Plus. First it was Google Plus Local, and then it was just Google Plus. And then Google Places search got axed, and then it became Google My Business, which was just a business brand. At which point I noted, this was 2013, that Google seemed to be doing away with branding of local as distinct from Maps. And then in 2015, I noted that Maps had become the primary sort of brand around local. And this seems to be at some level just a continuation from a consumer standpoint, right? And the question is, what does this rebranding mean from a business standpoint? Google is positioning it as Google is the brand, the apps are like search and maps, and the product, as they call it, is the business profile. And they're equating that business profile on a level to other business tools like analytics and Search Console, no Google before them. And I also see it. So in that sense, it is just a rebranding. The question is, what does it mean? And what they've created three brands out of three, they're bifurcating the product in three ways. The business profile, which allows small businesses.
That would be trifurcating.
Trifurcating. Yes. Sorry. You're correct. Trifurcated the product in three ways. The business profile, which lets businesses just edit directly in search. This is something that we long ago said, why not use search to promote business listings? They're finally doing it. What they call the business profile manager, which is the current dashboard, and the business profile API, which has been under active development. Whereas, you know, I would agree with David on this point. The dashboard has been under inactive development, while the business profile and the experience.
No, Mike, it's been under active neglect, in my opinion.
Active neglect. And so the question is, you know, many, right? Is it more than just a rebranding? I mean, will one of these elements go away, or they all stay? Is it less than, you know, is it just Google finally getting their branding house in order? Or will it give them a chance to create a really cool dashboard that might actually work? God forbid.
Well, and who's that dashboard for, right? It seems like it's for enterprises now and not for SMBs.
Right. And the dashboard always has had this problem. Originally, it was for SMBs, so it was very constrained. And then as they released more and more features, it became very complicated. SMBs had trouble interacting with it. It didn't work that well for SMBs. And it didn't work that well for enterprise either.
Well, so
bugs.
It seems to me that this is a fundamental point, right? Is that initially this was conceived of as a small business facing product, and enterprises wanted in, you know, sort of through their agencies, and it didn't really accommodate them very well. And they recognize that this is, you know, that they want that business. Obviously, they want those enterprises to participate, and they need different features for the small business and the enterprise. market.
And they need the Yexts and the Uberalls of the world because this is how they really are getting business listings. I mean, it's really the most reliable way for them to get business
Right.
listings.
So they need APIs and they need sophisticated tools and sophisticated reporting and all of that.
And they need sophisticated companies going out finding businesses as they crop up on the street, or as they need services. The one question I have about that, though, is are they going to pull a Google AdWords on the Uberalls and Yext of the world and essentially obviate the, or will they, leave it in your hands and get rid of something like the dashboard?
So Mike,
this is a discussion
as we've been chatting in a private Slack channel prior to today's podcast, I actually think your verb bifurcate is more of the long-term direction that Google is heading here. That the API is really what they expect enterprises and Yext and Uberall to use, and the search result is what they expect small businesses to use. And I think they're actually that this is the sort of first step down a path of deproductizing the business profile manager altogether. I see this not as elevating or at least repositioning the profile manager on the same level as analytics and search console. Those are both very heavily invested in as products, as web applications that users interact with and derive value from. And historically, the dashboard has, as I said, has been under active neglect. If anything, it has made the experience of managing listings certainly more frustrating than it has been historically over the last, I would say, 3 years or so. It's been on a pretty steady decline since Google's sort of ramp up in investment in features that you chronicled so well in about 2017. So I see this as Google really turning the act of managing a listing or a profile as a search feature for SMBs, and that they expect bigger brands to work with an agency that has an API integration or have an in-house development team that's feeding Google all this data directly. So that's kind of, I think that there's, what I think is really interesting, which Claire Carlisle and I were discussing, is where does all the rich functionality that the app had been sort of promoting and enabling, things like posts and review responses and all of this stuff, I just feel like needs a home as a product. Where does all that stuff go? And maybe Google has a plan that they haven't announced yet, but it just feels like a huge degradation in experience. And I thought it was a completely disingenuous statement from whoever the product manager that announced this was that, we're going to remove the app in 2022 so that businesses can have the advantage of taking advantage of the ability to edit their information in the search feature. Those two things are completely separate. Just because you're giving businesses the ability to have a better experience in the SERP doesn't mean you have to remove the app. I just think they're giving up on the app. They're giving up on trying to engage SMBs in a product at all.
Do you think, though, giving up on the app is somewhat a function of them wanting more control? They've always been a web-based company, and the app puts Apple in control to some extent of too many things. And so by moving to a web-based interface, they're basically cutting Apple out of the equation.
But I don't think I see it not as app as something you install on a phone. I see it as a product geared towards a certain audience, right? So I'm using app as a platform agnostic platform agnostic set of features.
Well, but this is really a valid question. The point that you raise about where do these posts and messages and where is all of this going to happen? Is it going to happen through some search UI?
Where do I go to toggle off the I want calls from Google Duplex, right? Where does that kind of thing exist in this world?
Well, according, Google is contending that the individual location functionality within the dashboard and within the profile and search are going to be at parity at some point. Now, just let me read you Google's statement about the dashboard for what it's worth. The existing Google My Business web experience will transition to primarily support larger businesses with multiple locations and will be renamed Business Profile Manager. We'll share more details on these changes in the months ahead. That was their statement. Now, you're saying that that's totally just a red herring.
I'm saying I think that that they've basically given up. They've done we've all three of us have chronicled Google's struggles in understanding small merchants and reaching them and getting them to engage with Google at anywhere near the level that Facebook and Instagram have. And I think that this is Google potentially, or at least the current leadership in Google, potentially acknowledging that it's just not something they're ever going to be good at and degrading the experience for small merchants.
What do you do? What do you do for it seems like the experience is really bifurcating in the sense that you're going to have a sophisticated API, multi-location enterprise facing experience, and then you're going to have this search experience really aimed at single location businesses. Not it's like the Targets and the Costcos and the Walmarts of the world. And then over here, you've got the true mom and pops. Yep. But what about the folks in the middle who, may work with small agencies, the sort of local SEO world that we know, these small agencies that work with individual businesses, but they also work with these sort of small enterprise types. I mean, where do those folks fit in here?
I mean, do they go to like Moment Feed Uberall as is Google pushing everybody to the question is Google relying on bigger people or relying on them less? That's really the question.
So I don't have perspective on that from I'm not in the direct conversation with Google within Uberall, but I can tell you that my instinct is that it will rely more for business acquisition on its partners like that, its big partners. But I'm speculating.
I mean, from where I sit, I think it gives them an opportunity to actually invest in the
profile manager,
profile manager, plural, so as to provide a real multi-location experience that works. Yep. And David and I actually have made
a one beer bet as our standard unit of wager.
Right. Mm-hmm. I think I've won the last
couple.
Won although
the last
again,
three, I think, but
although it's always an issue when the story ends. I won the one on Google Plus, but if it had lasted a year or two longer, I would have lost it. So I think it always matters when these bets end. But we have a friendly wager, and I am wagering that Google is not being disingenuous. They do not have plans to nuke the dashboard, that they are intending to actually make it work for the businesses that you talk about, Craig, the 3 to 300 locations that are trying to manage listings on their own and use Google as a core functionality.
Well, as I'm often inclined to say, the truth may be somewhere in between, or the truth is out there, as the case may be. I think what Google may be doing is waiting, the test and learn methodology that Adam Dorfman referenced in his article on Google Business Profile that's on Near Media. They may be doing this to see how the market reacts, and the jury may still be out on this. So,
Google never will hesitate to throw away a product if they don't think it's meeting their goals, regardless of how important the product is.
But I mean, they may not have a roadmap clearly defined here. Is what I'm trying to say.
Or they may have a roadmap declined and they still will throw a product away. This is how they work. I mean, they just don't care about what a business needs in terms of planning. I mean, businesses think in terms of 5 years commitments to a product, that kind of thing. They think in terms of 6 months or a year or 18 months. And these two are incompatible views of technical reality. It makes it really hard for businesses to build a system that works.
To what extent do you think this is driven? I mean, there's a number of motivations here potentially, but to what extent do you think this is really driven to the gravitational force shifting to the enterprise? Or conversely, do you think that they just failed to get businesses to adopt the app and really engage with it to the degree that they wanted, and so they're walking away from that?
Right. I'm all in on the latter. I think it's an admission of failure and cutting their losses much more than a strategic shift to enterprise.
Right. I mean, I think it's a little of both. I think they've learned that they never successfully position, and still do not position search as not just an alternative to Facebook, but as a significantly better source of real leads than Facebook. They never communicate that very effectively. They still don't. And so of necessity, given that they don't want to advertise, they don't want to, do the things in marketing that is needed to do that, they're going to continue to fail in that regard. I think the search interface makes more sense because it's more visible to those very small businesses. I think there is a lot of opportunity in a working dashboard. And I think that their plan currently is to have three things and to invest in three things going forward. And the reason I think that is that I think that their maintenance costs are going to go down. They have a really good API and they build out large elements of the single business interface through search. All of that can be integrated into a dashboard that focuses on multi-user needs from it. That's the only thing they have to do. Everything else is already built. So I think it reduces their maintenance across the board.
Search is not
and can allow them to focus.
Search is not a search result.
I'm not talking about search, the interface.
The search result is not a purpose-built product for the small business, right? That is going to be if we thought that the dashboard was a bad SMB experience, the SMB experience of trying to manage a listing in a search result is going to be atrocious.
Yeah, it seems very awkward to me.
And maybe that's who they're walking away from in this. I mean, I don't know.
Well, so earlier this week, I wrote about not exactly a study, an analysis by a company called WebFindYou, which is a marketing firm that argued, kind of in vague terms, that 92% of small businesses could not afford what they call true digital marketing, which was a kind of all-in definition of web hosting and paid media and earned media. And it's kind of interesting to think about. That's for another time. But the reason I bring it up now is because, as you point out, David, Facebook has had so much more success bringing in small businesses than Google has from a direct self-service perspective. And
hanging on to them 5 years after the sell-by date.
It's the retention and the ongoing engagement of those businesses that's even more compelling. So.
But I mean, as we talked about with Joy's findings that GMB was driving a lot more leads than organic search, and Mike, your work for the diner that was a GMB only marketing strategy that was pretty successful. GMB is really a underutilized tool for small businesses, which is free. And if you have no budget or you don't have a sufficient budget to do all these things that you're supposed to be doing, that seems to be the place that should be the number one place that you go to optimize your digital marketing opportunity, and it's just not happening, strangely.
It's always been too complicated, and it's been obtuse, and Google's been intentionally obfuscates the reality of it. They don't want to give too much away. It's going to cause spam.
And unlike your Facebook page and unlike your Instagram profile, you don't own your Google business profile. Google does. And I really wonder where that philosophy is going to come down when you have a business trying to edit things that users have contributed right in an inline search result and continuing to get frustrated. I don't like.
Why can't I change the one thing that really pisses
Why can't
me
I?
off?
How do I get rid of this photo of the toilet that's showing up front and center on my GBP? So I think it's just there's a sort of an inherent conflict in the way Google thinks about who owns the profile, and an inherent inability on their part to understand how to make an interface and a product that is going to excite and continue to engage a business owner. And I don't see either of those things getting resolved by this recent rollout. So,
well, I would agree with you that they may not be resolved, but I disagree with you in that I think that they are moving down this 3-path direction of API dashboard and merchant interface, search interface.
Yeah,
right. And again, I guess I agree. I hadn't thought about how painful it might be to do certain things in the search interface, for sure.
Well, I mean, what's interesting is this going to reduce the likelihood that we're going to get more images and posts and products and other things from small businesses?
Well, that's what I actually think that that by deproductizing local, they're going to push merchants into whatever other Google products. Ads. Yeah, so it could be ads, could be Google Merchant Center. It could, right. Location extensions might, the enterprise dashboard for GBP might eventually get folded into ads as location extensions manager, is something I could very easily see happening. So I feel like we may not lose a lot of the features that we see in the business profile today as consumers, but merchants might have to access those in multiple different places around
in fragmented ways.
Well, we might not see them if the government takes them away. Oh my God.
That's a teaser for next week's Near Memo, episode 41 from Mike there.
I can't believe the brazen bullshit that one hit me with. It's like Google telling me how I need to advocate on their behalf, as if I don't have enough trouble advocating on my own behalf.
You're being slightly oblique, but that's a teaser for Mike's next blog post and next week's discussion. I wonder. Google has not had success with true small businesses in AdWords, really. I mean, I think there are some, but it's been there's been a chronic churn problem. And I'm just wondering whether, there was some revenue associated with GMB, delivery revenue and certain other small revenue. But I'm wondering if they're trying to force people into an advertising environment now because there's not enough revenue coming out of GMB.
I will say, Greg, I'll add a qualifier to your statement, though, that LSAs seem to be successful for both Google and merchants, and I have to think that the retention there is much better than ads.
I was not thinking about that. That's in fact true. One interesting point that last week I wrote about the fake reviews report that we produced together with Curtis Boyd's Transparency Company, and he and I were talking. And a lot of these articles about fake reviews talk about is Google making money? Is Google not making money? Why are they not enforcing, aggressively? And now with LSAs that include reviews as a piece of that, some of those fake reviews are making their way into a Google ad product. So some of those profiles,
as are fake link locations.
Yeah. And so the ad product now, which, as you rightly point out, David, is very successful, is being tainted by fraud. And that's really something that Google needs to do something about. But that's a different topic.
You would think it's a different topic, but it's so amazing to me that LSA, like Google local GMB people, learned a lot about spam and about locations and none of that information seems to have been shared with LSA, as far as I can tell. So, I mean, you're seeing all the same problems that were early problems with GMB. They've gotten more sophisticated.
Well, it's probably because there's an entirely different group of people that are in control of that.
It's the ad silo and the I don't even know what the silo is called anymore, but the former GMB silo.
Yeah, you could see under Carter Maslin and Marissa Mayer that they had grand hopes for local as a branded product, and that was, for whatever reason, never came to fruition.
And in a way they don't need it, right? Because Google is the place that people go to for local business reviews, and it is the place where people go to for this local information.
And it's the place they go to for navigation, which is
which is another piece of it. And Google continues to press ahead on the ad side. Now they introduced optimization for in-store visits, right, and in-store sales. So they continue to sort of emphasize local and press ahead with local on the ad side, and now sort of de-emphasizing it as a product, as you're pointing out, David, on the SMB side of things, as a free product, that is.
Yep.
All right. Have we exhausted?
Certainly,
I think we may have exhausted.
Have we exhausted the topic?
It certainly would indicate an end of our era, right? The era of leveraging these free resources to maximize lead generation. And I mean, I'll miss it, but I won't miss it,
No, I think as we said last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago now, like, to me, this is a pretty exciting time to be in marketing, because I think we've actually sort of reached a new era where the sort of quick and easy, enter a custom category and rank instantly kind of days are gone, and the cheap Facebook ads that led to thousands of conversions for $100 are gone. So we're kind of in this new this new world, which I think is going to spur some really interesting marketing concepts moving forward. So I don't know that I'll miss it that much either, but I will. I continue, as you and I have talked many times, Mike. I continue to be frustrated that Google doesn't take its monopolistic position seriously vis-a-vis the experience and the support they provide small businesses, and this seems like a step in the wrong direction on that note. So,
yeah, I just as along those lines, they're theoretical. How are you going to deal with suspensions in this interface and verifications in this interface? Those are all, which I think which are interesting and complicated problems, and we're going to see how they do it.
To be continued.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for part 2 next week on episode 41, where you'll understand what Mike was referring to about 10 minutes ago.
Yes.
All will be revealed.
Or you won't understand it because I'm not sure I
All will be
understand.
revealed.
It's like, whoa.
All right.
All right.
And JFK Jr. will be our special guest next week.
Oh, thanks for listening.
Yes, that's right. So have a great rest of your week or weekend, as the case may be, and we will see you next week.
It's not clear to me how any weekend when they change time, is a good weekend. Can't be.
Well, you get an
Absolutely.
extra hour of
Gaining
sleep,
an hour.
right?
You're gaining an hour this weekend, but yeah.
Gaining, losing.
Gaining this
I'll be
spring.
groggy no matter what.
Okay. All right. See you next week.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.